I still remember the exact moment I decided to help him, because that single decision split my life into two parts, before the flight and everything that came after. It was an overnight international flight, one of those long-haul journeys where time loses meaning and the cabin lights stay dim for hours. I was exhausted, irritated, and honestly just wanted to put my headphones on and disappear into a movie. I had just wrapped up a brutal month at work. I was a mid-level project manager at a logistics firm, climbing slowly but steadily, married for 6 years, no kids yet, saving for a house. Nothing glamorous, nothing dramatic, just a stable, predictable life that I thought I had earned. He was sitting 2 rows ahead of me by the aisle. I noticed him because the flight attendant noticed him. He looked disoriented, sweating through his button-down shirt, fumbling with his bag like his hands didn't quite obey him. At first, I assumed he was just another nervous flyer or someone who drank too much at the airport bar. Then I heard him whisper, almost pleading, "Please, I need help." People heard him. People looked. And people did what people usually do in those situations. They looked away. I don't know why I didn't. Maybe it was because my father raised me to believe that you don't ignore someone in trouble. Maybe it was because I saw fear in his eyes, real fear, the kind that doesn't fake well. Or maybe I was just tired of being the guy who always stayed in his lane. Whatever the reason, I unbuckled my seatbelt and leaned forward. "Are you okay?" I asked. He shook his head barely. "I think I'm in trouble," he said. His voice trembled. "I need someone to hold on to something for me, just until we land." That should have been my cue to sit back down. Every instinct screamed that this was not my problem. But when he reached into his bag, I panicked. Not because of what he pulled out, but because of how desperately he looked at me while doing it. It was an envelope. Thick. Heavy. He pressed it into my hand like it might disappear if he didn't. "Please," he said, "if anything happens to me, you need to give this to my sister. Her name is written inside. Just don't open it." I hesitated. My mind raced through worst-case scenarios. Drugs. Cash. Something illegal. Something that could get me arrested before the plane even landed. But he didn't look like a criminal mastermind. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "I can't," I said. "I don't even know you." "I know," he replied. "That's why it has to be you." That line still echoes in my head. The flight attendant was approaching, concern on her face, and he tightened his grip on my wrist. "Please," he whispered again. "I don't have anyone else." I did the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. I nodded. I slipped the envelope into my carry-on and helped him sit back, telling the flight attendant he was just anxious and needed water. She gave me a skeptical look, but moved on. He leaned back, closed his eyes, and for a moment I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. Halfway through the flight, he was gone. Not dead. At least not that I knew then, but escorted off the plane by security during an unscheduled landing. No announcement, no explanation. Just flashing authority badges and hushed conversations. I sat frozen in my seat, my heart pounding, my bag under my feet, feeling suddenly radioactive. No one questioned me. No one searched my things. The plane took off again, and everyone slowly returned to their movies and sleep. I didn't. I stared at the seat in front of me and replayed his words over and over. When we landed at our final destination, I expected to be stopped. I wasn't. I walked through customs like a ghost, every step feeling unreal. By the time I reached my hotel, my hands were shaking. I didn't open the envelope. I told myself I wouldn't. But curiosity and fear are powerful partners. Around 3 in the morning, unable to sleep, I pulled it out. Inside were documents, bank records, photocopies of passports, names I didn't recognize, and one thing that made my stomach drop. My own name, printed neatly on a typed page next to my company's name and my home address. I felt like the room tilted. I read everything twice, then a third time. It didn't make sense. According to those papers, I was involved in money laundering, offshore accounts, shell companies, transactions worth millions. None of it was real. None of it was mine. But it was convincing, terrifyingly convincing. I didn't know what to do, so I did nothing. I put the envelope back, locked it in my suitcase, and convinced myself that I'd find his sister and hand it over as promised. That was my responsibility. That was it. I never got the chance. 2 days after I returned home, my office computer was seized. HR asked me to step into a conference room with two men in suits who didn't smile. My accounts were frozen. My access badge stopped working. My wife called me crying, saying there were officers at our apartment asking questions about me. By the end of the week, I was suspended pending investigation. By the end of the month, I was fired without prejudice, which sounds neutral until you realize it means no one will ever hire you again. I tried to explain. Weren't you telling me? I didn't have answers that satisfied her. Eventually, she stopped asking and started sleeping on the couch. 3 months later, she moved out. The case dragged on for over a year. Charges were never officially filed, but the investigation never closed either. I existed in a legal limbo where I wasn't guilty enough to imprison, but too suspicious to ignore. My savings vanished into legal fees. We sold the car, then the apartment. I moved into a small rented room and learned how quickly dignity can disappear when your name becomes a liability. I tried to find the man. I searched records, news articles, anything. He was a ghost. The sister didn't exist, or at least no one by that name could be found. Sometimes I wondered if he had ever been real at all, or if he had been carefully designed to look harmless enough for someone like me to trust. The worst part wasn't the money or the reputation. It was the isolation. People didn't want to hear my story. They wanted a simpler version where I was either innocent and unlucky or guilty and lying. Real life didn't fit neatly into either. 2 years after the flight, I was finally cleared. Quietly. No epaligi. No compensación. Just a letter stating that there was insufficient evidence to proceed further. By then, it didn't matter. My career was gone. My marriage was over. My confidence was shattered. I had become a man who second-guessed every instinct, every impulse to help. Sometimes I replay that moment on the plane and imagine myself staying seated. Imagine the envelope never touching my hand. In that version of my life, I'm probably still arguing with my wife about paint colors for a house we almost bought. I'm probably complaining about work instead of begging for it. I don't hate the man who asked me for help. I hate the part of myself that believed doing the right thing would protect me. If you're reading this, I want you to understand something important. Kindness is not weakness, but blind trust can be dangerous. Helping someone doesn't mean sacrificing your own safety, your future, or your family. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to protect yourself. And if this story made you pause, if it made you rethink a choice you're about to make or a boundary you've been afraid to set, then don't let it end here. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Talk about it. Learn from it. Because sometimes the most powerful call to action is simply choosing to be wise as well as kind before one small decision changes your life forever.